Iran's feeling very vulnerable at the moment. It thought it was one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and now it's got aircraft just operating freely above Tehran and a lot of Iran. And therefore, actually, although Iran's threatening America, if it did strike, if it did drag America into this, it would look very bleak for Iran. It hasn't got an answer to Israel, let alone an answer to the biggest superpower in the world.
Who knows if America will add its military might and its crucial bunker buster bombs to Israel's attacks on Iran. Maybe Donald Trump, maybe not even he does yet. So what are the options for America and how might they affect the conflict and Iran's nuclear programme? Well, let's talk to Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell, a military analyst and former RAF fighter pilot. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate.
Great to have you with us on the programme today. What is your assessment of how successful this Israeli campaign has been so far?
Well, yeah, that's an interesting question, isn't it? As a military guy, campaigns are all about planning. You don't want to wake up one morning and suddenly decide you want to do something. What's pretty clear is that Prime Minister Netanyahu, who sees Iran as an existential threat to Israel, who sees Iran's nuclear program as absolutely fundamental to the risk to Israel's safety. And therefore, although he's been watching the diplomatic efforts over the years to try to delay or slow down Iran's nuclear program, it's pretty clear that he had little confidence. So he's been planning this for some years, and I think there was a degree of inevitability that the pin was going to be pulled eventually. And I have to say, it's very, very clever, very comprehensive, very much like the Israeli campaign against Hezbollah, if you remember, with those walkie-talkies. That was years in the planning. To actually roll back a nation's air defense systems as effectively as Israel has, and then run air superiority over most of Iran, be able to strike targets with impunity, it does seem to be a very, very effective plan. And so far, seems to be going according to plan.
Well, I'm interested in the use of the word so far, because it does seem, when you take a step back, if Israel's aim here is to destroy Iran's ability to generate or to enrich uranium and potentially to generate regime change, although they're not necessarily saying that out loud as strongly, there has always been a question about whether Israel could achieve that aim on its own. Do you think there was always the hope that America would come and help here?
Yes, I think, well, there's 3 points there. Let's take one at a time. One of which is this question about regime change. I'm a military guy, grey-haired veteran of a fair few campaigns. I don't think air power alone is going to result in regime change, however much Prime Minister Netanyahu might want it. There are several regional powers, Saudi Arabia, UAE, the like, who might all actually prefer that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, but absolutely will not want to see regime change done this way. They don't want to see another Arab Spring. Let's be quite clear. There's very few democracy in the region, and that might cause some concerns. I think in terms of military capability, Israel is the strongest regional power militarily, and almost certainly will be able to strike most of the nuclear targets. You'll remember it isn't just about hardware. We tend to focus on certain things, but day one, the reason they didn't tell anybody, wanted an element of surprise. Take out the scientists, they've got the massive amount of expertise, and all of a sudden that sets back the program by probably years, if not decades. Then you can focus on the infrastructure and also these long-range missiles and their production. The big sticking point seems to be these facilities. There's one of them at Fordo, which are deep underground. You need very specialised weapons to take them out. Israel does have bunker busters, 5,000-pound GBU-28s. Those bombs are 5 times the size that ones I used to fly with. They can get through about 30 metres of soil and quite a large amount of reinforced concrete, but not enough to get through. Now, either you keep plugging away, making a bigger and bigger crater, eventually you will get through, but the only bomb that can do this job really is the massive ordnance MOP, which is an American 30,000-pound bomb, specially designed, sleek, and can get through up to 60 metres of concrete and soil. The trouble is that can only be delivered from a B-2 Spirit bomber, and therefore America would have to be involved before that could be used.
And if that were to be used, the next question that follows, if that is where this is going, what would that mean for the region in terms of a nuclear risk? Because we're talking about hitting nuclear facilities here, facilities where Iran is enriching uranium underneath the ground in these bunkers. What kind of a risk are we talking about?
I think we've got to be quite careful when we talk about risk, because I don't think we're talking about nuclear weapons here at the moment. We're simply talking about enriched uranium, which is very different. I'm not a physicist or a scientist, but I understand the risks there are significantly lower. We're not talking about nuclear bombs here, and we are talking about it being deep underground. I think the bigger worry from my perspective is the danger if America gets directly involved in this conflict. What does that mean? How does that manifest itself? And I suspect that's why when President Trump had this meeting with the colleagues in the White House, that there wasn't a unanimous view about this. There were clearly some people who thought that America shouldn't be involved. It is interesting, Donald Trump's rhetoric, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and therefore that sort of lays the ground rules. I think some of this, though, also you have to remember that Iran is feeling very vulnerable at the moment. It thought it was one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and now it's got aircraft just operating freely above Tehran and a lot of Iran. And therefore, actually, although Iran's threatening America, if it did strike, if it did drag America into this, it would look very bleak for Iran. It hasn't got an answer to Israel, let alone an answer to the biggest superpower in the world. So there's a lot of rhetoric flying around here at the moment. I'm not sure exactly what President Trump's next move will be.
And do you think that this is rhetoric, that what we're seeing from Donald Trump is ramping up the tension, ramping up the sort of noise around the idea that America could well get involved, but ultimately the aim really here is to get Iran to back down?
Ultimately, they've tried diplomatic efforts to stop Iran developing a nuclear weapon, and that doesn't seem to have worked. As a result, this is all about setting back Iran's nuclear program. The challenge here, of course, is you can't destroy it completely. It's a bit like Israel trying to destroy Hamas. There'll always be a latent capability, and if you have the intent and the money, then you can pursue it again. What they're trying to do is put it back decades, not weeks, and therefore make it very difficult for Iran to start again. But you do start then a cycle of diplomacy that ultimately leads to military action. Iran has already dug its facilities very deep to make them very difficult to target. If they were to continue to develop a bomb, it'll just be even deeper, make it even more difficult to target. You can't make this problem go away, but you can delay it for a couple of decades.
Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell, many thanks for your analysis this morning.
You're welcome.
I wonder what it would be. It would be a suicidal act for Iran to attack an American base, wouldn't it? I know some people are saying that Iran could drag America in the war, and Trump's left very little rhetorical room for himself there. If Iran were to hit an American target even by accident, you would think be compelled to do something strongly just on the basis of what he's said.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the question there, and it's the one we were just talking around, is if America did decide to lend its support to Israel, I mean, America would have to be the one to drop that bomb. Israel does not have the facility or the capability to be able to do it itself. America would then be involved. If Iran is so weak, is now the only moment that you would be able to technically do that and not risk retaliation. But what do you risk building up as a result of that? I mean, the political situation in Iran is unclear. There are many, many people who do not support the Ayatollah, but what is the alternative? Yeah. How strongly do people feel about America and Israel and what's happening currently? I mean, they're not welcoming what Netanyahu is doing, despite not liking the regime. So the repercussions of this kind of action may well seem straightforward, but they never are straightforward.
And that's why Iraq is an important thing that's on people's minds. We heard that they're talking about openly in the Arabic countries. We're going to hear from an American former army person who is the first thing he talks about. This is like Iraq. It's like weapons of mass destruction. Of course, it makes sense at one level to go in and take out someone who is a threat, however much you perceive that threat to be, a bad regime, a regime that is cruel and persecutes its people. But what follows next is...
Well, beyond that, all of the Western allies agree that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. I mean, that has been agreed upon. And I suppose the question here is Israel says it has intelligence that suggests that that Iran was on the verge of being able to develop a nuclear bomb. Now, there is some question about that, and American intelligence does not seem to support that. No. And that's where there seems to be a bone of contention between Netanyahu and Trump. But, how far along that process they are and how far you can degrade it is the big unknown here.
And maybe this isn't the time to discuss, but I'm also struck by the fact that they've taken out scientists. The morality of that interests me. That do we believe that warfare should be conducted by targeting scientists who are contributing to a scientific program which could lead eventually towards a nuclear bomb?
All the big questions here this morning on Times Radio
Right
Breakfast.
or wrong? I don't know the answer to
Well,
that
lots of
question.
you have views. 0333 003 2353 if you'd like to share them.